we continue to talk to the scientists at the Dangoor Center for Personalized Medicine to get a closer look at what's happening in their research laboratories and what developments are expected to reach the market, what medicine will look like in the coming years. This time we have the honor of hosting Professor Dana Atzil-Slonim, a clinical psychologist. She's head of the clinical program for adults at Bar-Ilan University and director of the Psychotherapy Research Laboratory at the community clinic at Bar-Ilan. As head of the laboratory, Dr. Atzil-Slonim is behind dozens of groundbreaking studies involving a multi-layered approach in the field of personalized mental health. This laboratory, headed by Professor Atzil-Slonim, is one of the largest and most advanced psychotherapy research clinics in the world. It employs a model that combines advanced technologies for monitoring, for observations, and direct feedback to the therapists. The community clinic also provides subsidized mental health care to approximately 300 patients each year. In addition to being an associate professor, a leading researcher, and head of this impressive laboratory, Professor Atzil-Slonim also directs the Bar-Ilan Impact Center for improving the accuracy of depression treatment. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to be here.
Great. We're thrilled to have you. Let's start where I ended the intro with depression. We know that it's one of the greatest mental health challenges in the world, and it's growing. Mm-hmm. What is the current situation? What are the numbers? What do they look like?
Yeah, so you're right. Actually, depression is a devastating situation. It robs people from their pleasure in life, their willingness to work and love, and sometimes their willingness to live. Mm-hmm. And currently we know that around 322 million people around the world suffer from depression.
322 million people?
Yes, and the numbers are rising, and this leads to enormous personal and economic losses. And what we know is that, the numbers are really, really high. People commit suicide as a result of depression. 1 in 5 women, 1 in 10 men suffer from depression. Yet, most of the people who suffer from depression do not even know that they have these symptoms and that they can be helped and that it's not their own fault what they feel. So they do not refer themselves to treatment. And those that do refer themselves to treatment often do not find available clinicians. We know this is a problem here in Israel. After October 7th, it became even harder to find available clinicians. But we know that this is a problem all around the Western world, that people refer themselves to treatment and there are not enough available clinicians. One of the reasons for that is that still the main treatment model is one-on-one in-person meetings with very qualified trained for many years clinicians. So people do not find available places. Another main problem in our field, and the critics among the clinicians is growing about this, is the diagnostic system. We know that current systems like the DSM and the ICD are too crude to capture the heterogeneity of depression, the intrapersonal variability, like people feel different in different times, and depression is very, very dynamic, and also the interpersonal variability of depression, the interpersonal differences, because one client can come to the clinic and complain about depression, feeling very agitated, cannot sleep at night, and feel very angry all the time, while another patient will describe feeling blunted emotions and cannot get out of bed and does not have desire to do anything in her life, and they would be diagnosed with major depressive disorder. So current systems just do not capture these differences. And maybe the main problem, I think, in our field is that current treatment are not effective enough. And this has been the case for almost 4 decades.
Wow.
So we have so many evidence-based treatment, both pharmacotherapy and psychotherapy, CBT, psychodynamic treatment, interpersonal, and so on. All of these are first-line treatments. But what we know is that only 50% of the clients achieve significant change as a result of treatment. This is really not good enough. Think of it we know that treatment is better than no treatment. Okay, so within treatment, so people achieve between 40 to 60% improvement as a result of treatment, while placebo or waiting list would be between 20 to 40%. So we know that treatment is better than no treatment, but think of it, 50% do not get significant change. Clearly, we really need to improve mental health care practices.
Yeah, it sounds like this is a problem that is compounded. So it's growing numbers, it's complexity and insufficient diagnosis, personally, and probably, I suspect, as much as I know it's your field and I don't want to knock anyone in your field, not every clinician is perfect, right? And so you didn't even mention that because you're being kind, but even within this limited number of clinicians, which isn't sufficient, you need people who are really good, and especially when you're talking about it's one-on-one, there's a certain expertise people need to have, and then it sounds like even within that, because of the variability of how it manifests and the variability of each person's individual experience, only 50% are actually being helped with the treatments that are currently available.
Exactly. And what is super interesting is that actually what we found out, and this is something that people find out in different samples all around the world, is that therapists vary a lot with their ability to help clients. This is exactly what you said. There are these people, we call them super shrinks, people who are very, very talented.
They're intuitive.
Very intuitive and empathetic. I mean, as a clinician, as supervisors, you always know there are these supervisees that just know exactly what to say at the right moment, that really, really capture the patient's patterns and can be very, very empathetic and say the right thing at the right time. And we do not know exactly what they do. If we could have learned from them, from these super shrinks, from these people who are very, very talented, so we could have, make this knowledge more available to more people and improve the effectiveness of treatment.
Right.
But this is, of course, very, very hard to model.
It's the science and the art, right? You can train people in the science of it, but there's something that feels like we say the art, but it's the intuition, it's the empathy. But what I think you're trying to say is some of that, if we could make it into more of a science, we could get more people to be able to express those things.
Exactly. And this is what we're trying to capture, in fact, because, but it is super, super complex. I mean, think of it. In every single moment, a therapist can choose from so many options of interventions, and it depends on the context, on the patient's current emotion, on past experience, on their previous interactions. There are so many variables at play, and the therapist needs to choose the right one. So really modeling what works for whom and when is super complicated. And we know that until recently, psychotherapy research, the field that I'm part of, this community, has mainly been focused on using self-report measures that are provided to clients and therapists at the end or at the beginning of the session. These measures are, of course, super valuable. They capture the subjective experience of the client, but still they cannot capture what occurs in the dialogue, in the interaction, in the nonverbal aspect of the interaction between the client and the therapist. And studies that try to capture what occurs within the session usually use very small samples because it's very time-consuming and labor-intensive to code moment by moment what occurs in the interaction. And also many studies use 2 variables, 3 variables, like the connection, the association between therapeutic alliance and symptoms. But actually our science is more like forecasting the weather or predicting the stock market. There are really many, many variables at play, and we need to capture what to do when for each client. So this is why we really need new methods that can capture the dynamic nature of both the therapeutic interaction and the individual's experience.
So what kind of methodology is out there? I know the big word right now is AI,
Exactly.
big data collection. Is that something that you see relevant within the field of psychotherapy?
Yes, so this is actually the main focus of my research. We collaborate a lot with AI researchers. There are a lot of opportunities by combining AI with mental health. It is possible to use these methods to be better able to monitor people over time, to identify symptoms when they are still low, and to prevent the deterioration. So, for example, one study, I would just describe it very, very briefly, that we used electronic health records to predict depression a year before it actually occurred.
And it was statistically significant? You found the ability to do that?
In a very large data set. And also AI can be used to make more precise diagnosis and to allocate people to the most relevant treatment for them. Mm-hmm. And what mostly fascinates me is that AI can be used to better capture the mechanisms of change in psychotherapy, to better understand what works for whom and when, what are the interventions that works for a specific client in a specific time. So this is the main research area that I'm very, very much excited about.
Can I push a little bit on that piece
Sure.
in particular?
Sure.
I happen to have had the fortune of actually seeing your lab, so I know it's amazing and fascinating. And so I'm going to ask you to describe for people who don't exactly understand what that means. We get you look at a large sample size and you use AI to run through different variables and see what might predict. But you're talking about the actual interaction within, for each person, personalized in the therapy session. What does that look like? What does that mean even?
So yeah, we have very close collaboration between mental health researchers and AI researchers, experts in natural language processing, audio and facial expression and physiological analysis. And a main aspect in this sort of collaboration is, of course, data. We need lots and lots of data. And what we have in Bar-Ilan, in my lab, in our community clinic, is a very unique data set of recorded psychotherapy sessions. This is a clinic that provides subsidized treatments to the community for around 300 clients at a time. We see all sorts of clients who suffer from different problems, also depression, but not only depression. And we provide treatment to the community. And all this clinic is monitored by audio, video, and self-reports that are conducted session by session throughout therapy. So we actually currently have almost 20,000 recorded sessions that we can analyze and actually learn what occurs there and how we can identify the dynamics, the intrapersonal dynamics within the patient and the interpersonal dynamics between the client and the therapist that are predictive of positive treatment outcome.
So even words, for example, you're saying that there's certain words that your super therapists or your super intuitive people, your super shrinks, I think you call them, right? That they're the ones that they maybe intuitively use certain language. They intuitively lean towards the person. You know, we learn all this about body language, whatever it is. And so you're capturing this, recording it, and then you want to be able to pass it on to people who maybe don't naturally do that, but they'll learn as part of their training, not just the differences between CBT and DBT, but they'll learn part of what they need to do is engage in a particular way. That's where you're aiming? I just want to make sure I get it.
Yes, and I maybe explain a little bit more about
Please.
that. Because what we actually do is that we try to break down the interaction and the individual experience into core building blocks that are considered central according to a wide range of therapeutic approaches. So I call it the mind, the multimodal intrapersonal and interpersonal dynamics that we try to identify. And we think in terms of self-states, a combination of elements which are very, very central across treatment models. These are affect, behavior, cognition, and desire. ABCD elements, we call them.
Wait, just I'm going to
And
pause.
they are in an interaction between themselves. We also try to identify therapist interventions that are considered very, very central across therapeutic approaches, like empathy, like meaning-making, like directiveness, exploration, and so on. So we actually break down the interaction to core building blocks. And I will give you an example.
Before you even give the example, what do you mean by affect, behavior,
cognition and desire? Exactly. This is exactly the example.
What do those words mean? I mean, I can tell you what the dictionary would say, but you mean something specific by that.
Exactly. So I will try to explain. So think, for example, about a patient. Let's call her Ruth. She was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and she attributes her current episode to feeling that she doesn't know what to do next in her career after years devoted to motherhood. And she feels unsupported by her partner in finding her new path. So Ruth, she comes into the therapy session, we record it, and she tells the therapist that today during breakfast she was thinking about sharing with her husband that she might want to check whether to try to apply to this program that she was once accepted to before the kids and everything. But then she thought, why bother? He will criticize me anyway, and anyway I will not be accepted, so why bother? So if we look at Ruth's current self-state, so we can see that her D element, the desire, the motivation, or the expectation is that she will be rejected, she will be criticized. Her affect is hopeless, her behavior is avoidance, and her cognition is self-criticism and also perceiving the other as critical of her. But if you will really, really listen to Ruth very, very carefully, if you are super shrink and you can hear also her subtle voice, so you will also hear that actually she knows that she's very intelligent, and she actually knows that if she will share what she feels with her husband, so sometimes he can be supportive. So what we see, this is very fascinating, that in every specific moment, people tend to have this dominant self-state, sometimes very maladaptive self-state that they are stuck in. And they also have a more subtle, sometimes more adaptive self-state. So we try to understand how to help a patient like Ruth to move from a maladaptive state to a more adaptive one. And how we do it. And we argue that there is a limited set of self-state and limited set of dynamics, of interpersonal dynamics that can help a patient move from maladaptive to a more adaptive state. For example, if the therapist is very empathetic to Ruth and help her and listen to her and understand her, so she starts to be self-understanding. So she will start to express self-understanding. Then the therapist can amplify this self-understanding and support this adaptive emotion, adaptive experience of Ruth. Only then, after her self-criticism is a little bit more moderate and her arousal is a little bit more moderate, the therapist can use meaning-making and help her see this repetitive pattern of her and help her increase her self-understanding and her insight about herself. We see that this pattern, for example, in our studies, is a very helpful dynamic. And if a therapist starts with the meaning-making, for example, or tries to amplify the adaptive voice before the patient express it themselves, so sometimes it can create complementarity rather than helping Ruth express the adaptive voice by herself. And just to say that we see a very similar pattern in a very different data set of romantic couples. So, for example, we see one of the partners is invited to share their experience, and the other to support. And we see that when the partner starts with providing advice, so it does not help at all. I will not say which gender does it more than the other. But trust me, it is much more helpful to be empathetic, to explore, to ask questions first, and only then to provide guidance or advice or something like that. And this is just one sequence, which is adaptive, and we see it is supported by theories. We see it in our data. It is associated with positive outcome. But this is just one example. And there are many other, sequences that are adaptive for other clients and in different contexts. This is exactly what we try to identify. And for that, we need large data and we need to scale up. And here is why we need actually the AI.
That's fascinating. My partner and I have worked out where I'll say something and he'll say to me, do you want support or do you want advice? He already knows,
He's
learned. You can teach your partner if you give them the right terms. We didn't talk in psychotherapy terminology, but very, layman terms.
But actually an interaction is an interaction.
Yes, of course.
And a good sequence is a good sequence. And helping someone, and this is exactly what we're trying to identify.
Right.
Which sequences work better than others.
And it sounds like everybody, it's you've got lots and lots of work to do, because this one obviously works for somebody who's got a good sense. You were talking about this subtle sense of self, which underlies the more negative, immediate, or most salient sense of the dynamic, and you have to first tap into that. And then, but I assume some people don't have, or maybe I'm wrong, that you need to first really know the person also. So it's very complicated, and you have to come up with all of these models, and you're still going to need brilliant clinicians, right? It's not gonna, that's not going to help.
Yeah, the buzzword of AI. I mean, it is very, very helpful. I mean, I will say in a minute how we use the AI here. But despite the buzz, that AI can really help, there are still many problems with using AI in mental health. I can
talk for a little bit about that.
Let's talk about a few main problems that we see. First is the ethical aspect and the tendency of current models to hallucinate, to be biased. So there are many ethical concerns that must be taken care of.
Can I ask you to elaborate a little? Because that's interesting. What do you mean by ethical concerns?
That, for example, that the model will provide an advice which does not capture exactly what the patient feels and can actually reinforce maladaptive patterns. We know from newspapers that there has been really problematic cases where the model provided bad advice. And there are also biases because these models are trained on the internet, and they learn also biases, stereotypes, and so this is problematic. And currently, the researchers that I work with put a lot of focus on helping these models to be less biased, more trustful, and to be evaluated systematically. Because one of the main problems is that current systems are already in the market and being used, but they will not rigorously evaluated. And it is super important that clinicians will be involved in the design, in the development, and in the evaluation of these systems according to clinical standards.
I had read, actually, not to interrupt you, but I had read this fascinating article about somebody using ChatGPT. A lot of people are using this free online for therapy.
Exactly. I mean, currently, this is already happening.
Yeah.
Currently, the most busy clinician in the world currently is ChatGPT. Actually, yeah. And
they're free.
And they do a pretty good job. It's
really?
The models are good. But they have many problems. They are far from being able to really provide psychotherapy. So, as I said, they can be biased, they can hallucinate, They can really, really miss something super important. And this can, I mean, when you work with such a sensitive population, this could be super problematic.
Right.
Another thing is that they are not temporally aware. Their ability to do temporal reasoning is quite limited. For example, the clinician must take into account the context, what had happened in previous sessions, what had happened to that person in their past, what had happened in the beginning of the session that the patient described. So the affect, the emotion that the patient described in the previous minute may be very much predictive of what they would say in the next minute or to what they just described right now. And the models, it's hard for them to make these connections. So sometimes we see that they just miss this temporal understanding. Another problem is that they're very generic. They're not personalized enough. So you start to talk with them and it sounds really, really good, but then you realize that they're not actually to talk to you. Right. It's kind of a little bit horoscopic, very generic. So this is why many people start kind of psychotherapy with these systems, but drop out quite early because they feel that it's too generic and it does not capture really their nuances, their tendency, their past experience, and so on. And another problem that we see is that these models are mainly trained on natural language processing, on language, on text, and they do not capture all the nonverbal aspect of the interaction, which are so important.
For sure.
The facial expression, the vocal tone, and everything. So currently, this is one thing that we try to do, is to develop these models to be more ethical, to be evaluated systematically, to be more temporally aware and more personalized, and also multimodal. This is a very strong effort that we do with the AI researchers that I collaborate with.
That sounds huge. I don't know how you wake up in the morning and break it down into tasks. It's an enormous effort you're doing. Have you seen success?
In what?
In your work, you've been able? You mentioned one of the models that seems to be relevant across different things, but you're taking so many variables into account. Have you seen? Maybe even I'll break it down for you a little bit. Have you found there are certain variables that definitely make a difference? That there's certain things that you need to evaluate or assess?
Yeah, I can talk about a specific research that we just submitted, and there are so many. So
Pick
it's not like it's not like
that excited you so much.
It's not like big success. You use research is step by step. You find out one thing, and then the next thing, and
but
then
it's
the
exciting.
next thing. But I'm excited about this study where we actually trained large language models, what we call LLMs, to be able to provide personalized interventions. So what we did, we used a hierarchical framework where we actually trained each model to be an expert in a specific intervention. So one model was trained to be an expert in exploration, the other in being supportive, the other in being directive, and the fourth one was in providing meaning-making on insights. And then there was a fifth model which acted as a judge and was supposed to look at the context of the psychotherapy session and decide what is the best intervention for that patient at that specific moment.
Very
and provide,
personalized.
it was, the next intervention was hidden, and the model provided the next intervention. Then clinical judges, so it was 600 interventions. 300 of them were made actually by the real therapist and 300 by the model. They were blind whether it was a model or a human that provided the intervention, and they needed to evaluate the helpfulness. And so we really got a support to that. The models are really good in providing exploration, empathy, and directiveness. They were on par with human. They actually can do that as well as human. They got the same ratings. But actually, in the meaning-making aspect, they were less good. So they didn't capture it yet. So I can give an example. For example, a patient is describing that they tend to be very much attuned to others and neglect their own needs. And the model says something like, why not listening more to others? Like, actually reinforcing the maladaptive pattern.
Right.
So, I mean, and we can see that sometimes the models really misses these opportunities to actually capture what is the repetitive pattern. So our conclusion here is that maybe we need still to train these models to be better in being better able to capture the dynamics, the intrapersonal and the interpersonal dynamics. But also we think that the future is in the collaboration between the clinician and the AI, so that the AI can provide feedback to therapists and help them to choose a better intervention for that patient at a specific moment, or be used for self-help tools between sessions, at follow-up, before treatment starts when people are at the waiting list, or after treatment ends to help people maintain their achievements in treatment and be better able to, to keep their adaptive voices and to be more aware of their maladaptive states, so they can strengthen or amplify the adaptive ones. So we think that we still need a therapist in the loop, that a human will be there in this way or another. We do not believe that currently the current models can really totally replace the human clinician, but they can do a lot of work and support in many, many ways.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I'm very impressed with AI. But it makes me a little nervous. I'll be honest. I'm probably like the majority of people who believe that it's got tremendous power to be helpful, but it's not quite human, right? And it is artificial. And that there's got to be something about humanity, something we bring that I hope, maybe I don't know, I hope it can never be replaced by a computer. I think there's something more to us. So I'm glad to hear your idea of the collaboration. It feels like you've got when we talk about ethics, you've got a perfect ethical balance there.
I totally agree with that. I think that human interaction will never be replaced. That there is something so special about the one-on-one meeting between two people that are sitting in the room, the synchrony, the co-regulation, the interaction, the non-verbal, someone that really knows you. This is something which is irreplaceable. Right. But I do think that these methods, these models can provide much more flexibility, like for people like Ruth. So she can actually choose to go into in-person meetings, to be helped, to feel much better, but then be better able to recognize her maladaptive voice, right? And be reminded by the AI that she can actually amplify the adaptive one and dampen the maladaptive voice and strengthen herself. And maybe she can also, in between sessions or after treatment, be supported by that. So it can provide people with much more flexibility. It can also make the knowledge of these super shrinks much more available to other people who are more, in the average range, and that they can learn, and this can be used for training, for supervision, to help therapists to provide the right intervention at the right time. So AI can really help us. What we do is that we actually annotate the interaction between the patient and the therapist. We annotate it manually. Then we use the AI to automatically annotate a very large data set of psychotherapy sessions. And only then we drill down to explore the dynamics, the interaction between the patient and the therapist, and what works for whom and when. And there, when we identify these dynamics using machine learning, data mining, we can actually teach these models to be better able to identify these dynamics and provide the right intervention at the right time. But yeah, I agree with you
it's
that
a nice
human
collaboration.
in a loop.
Yes, and there is nothing like the face-to-face. There just isn't.
I agree.
I won't go down the rabbit hole of what social media and online engagements are doing to empathy and to things like that. So I'm sure we can map it, but we won't go there. Let me just ask you a little bit for a moment about the clinical piece of this. How do people react when you say to them, we're going to be collecting all this data on you, and we're going to be doing it in all sorts of ways? The psychotherapy relationship, right? It's very intimate. It's very personal. Do you generally have a positive response to this, or are people kind of concerned about whether it'll interrupt their relationship?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I was also very much afraid when we started the clinic. So these were exactly my concerns, and I really agree with you that the interaction between the client and the therapist is so intimate, and this is so important that patient will feel secure, the therapist will feel that they can create this intimacy with the patient. But actually what we found out is that after a moment, and I'm saying that as a researcher, as a supervisor, but also as a clinician, I tried it myself to treat with cameras. So like we talk right now, and we kind of forgot for a second that there are cameras here. So this happens in the clinic after very few minutes. So the camera is there. I guess it... like you measure something, it interferes in some way. Yeah. Also in physics, but people are becoming, within the moment, in the interaction with the therapist, and they kind of forget. They know that the cameras are there. Of course, that when they are coming to our clinic, everything is very much open, and they know that they are coming to a training clinic, and that the therapies will be recorded for supervision and research purposes. So they sign, of course, consent forms and everything, and they know that they can decide that their recording will be deleted if they decided to do so. To ask for that. And also we ensure them that the data is being kept in a very, very secure way, and only very few people, researchers, will have access to this data. And we have data security officer. We take a lot of effort to do that in the right way. But I think that the intimacy is kept. I found out about it when I was treating. It was... after a minute, you are just in the moment, in the interaction with your client, and things just happened.
That's amazing. So let me ask you, how did you get here? Meaning, it's kind of a fascinating, it's not kind of, it is a fascinating collaboration between something that traditionally is seen as, talk therapy or whatever. It's all psychology. And your background is training as a psychotherapist. You're trained, right? But you bring in this AI. How did you come to love doing this? Did you start as a child playing with computers and people's minds at the same time? How did you end up with this laboratory doing this amazing collaboration, as I said, between so many interesting things?
So, yeah, I was on the path of being a clinician. So for many years, this is the way I was training myself and studying. I loved being a clinician. I did my training in the Student Counseling Center in the Hebrew University, which was a very psychodynamic place, very, very much focused on the clinical aspect. And I started to pursue my PhD in the Hebrew University at the psychology department, and there it was very much focused on research. And I was kind of curious about the split between these two places, because in these years I identified very much with my colleague clinicians. I was trained to be a clinical psychologist, and they said, how can you study psychotherapy? It's so unique. Each specific moment is so unique. The interaction between the patient and the therapist is influenced by so many variables, the emotion of the client, the emotion of the therapist, their past, their current interaction. This is so complex. How can you study it? It's just impossible to study the interaction. But then in the Department of Psychology in the Hebrew University, they said, how can you not study that? I mean, you are obliged to your patient to really ensure that what you are providing, the treatment you are providing, is something that you can evaluate and see whether you achieve good enough outcome. And of course, everything is really unique. The interaction is really unique, but there are things that you can actually generalize across patients, across interactions. And I found myself very curious about this emotional debate between the researchers and clinicians, and I started to follow people that actually try to integrate these fields and to ask questions which have a very important clinical meaning, that are clinically important, and that actually can be measured. So I started, I did my PhD, and then I joined, after postdoc, I joined Bar-Ilan University, and there the unique data set that we had, that we started to collect there, that was with a lot of support by our university's president, Professor Aryeh Saban, which really had this vision. It was like 10 years ago, he actually had this vision that data science is the future. And he supported us in actually building this clinic with all the video, audio, physiological measures, and all that, which actually allowed us to collect all this unique data. And I was very much interested in the AI. My partner is from the AI field, so I guess that I heard about that from him a lot, and started collaborations with AI researchers. I spent a sabbatical year in the Turing Institute in London, collaborating with Maria Liakata. She's also very much interested in leveraging AI to advance mental health. I also work a lot with Irina Gurevich from Darmstadt University in Germany. She's an expert in multimodal AI. And I actually found out that these models, these methods, are exactly what we need in order to ask the right questions and to be able to capture the complex dynamics within the individual and between the client and the therapist.
Right. I smiled because everybody, if you're a carpenter, you see everything as a hammer. If you're a shoemaker, you see everything as a shoe. So there are not that many of you who are able to see that you need both. That right?
Yes.
That it's the integration of the two, and having a training as a clinician and actually being a clinician adds so much value as a researcher, because you come with that perspective and you know exactly what to study and how to study and do all of that. So
exactly. And also in my lab, many of my students are clinicians in training, in different stages of the training, and this is super important to me because they actually know this experience of sitting in the room with the patient, of being empathetic, of struggling to help a patient who is stuck in a very stubborn situation sometimes, and find it hard to move to a more adaptive state. So they struggle with that, and we think about it together. We analyze the sessions moment by moment, both manually and then by using these advanced methods to analyze at scale.
Amazing. So where do you see this going? What's your dream 5 years from now, 10 years from now? If you could just magic wand it, where would you be? What would you be accomplishing?
So yeah, I think that there are many steps ahead. I think that really there's a lot to do to train these models to be better able to be more personalized, to capture the interaction, to capture the tone of voice, the nonverbal aspect, to capture what had happened before, to be better able to really identify the dynamics of a specific person at a specific time, and being able to provide the intervention right in time. So there is a lot to do, so that we can use our smartphones or any other
technology
to be able to provide the intervention right in time. And I hope that in the future, the technology will help us better monitor people, of course, by them allowing us to do that. People who suffer from depression know that it's chronic and that they can suffer again. And I believe that people who suffer from depression, if we would have assure them that they can be monitored and find also their strengths, right? What works for them? What are their the interactions or the experience that helps them stay on track instead of deteriorating into that horrible situation. So they would, I believe people will share this data in a secure way and so on to be helped and stay on track. And then we can develop self-help tools that will help people to have much more agency and choice in their life, so they will not only be dependent on, experts that will have this knowledge. And also for clinicians, I think that clinicians can be helped by these measures, that we can develop methods with AI that will capture the dynamics, the interpersonal and interpersonal emotional dynamics that clinician can help, which intervention can help a specific patient at a specific time and provide this intervention and learn what would help that patient in the following sessions. So I think this would be used for feedback for therapists in the future. I do believe that it will remain a collaboration. I hope it will remain, that clients will continue to meet a therapist in an interaction in the room. Sometimes you need someone to really listen to you. The human interaction is so important, but that it will provide people with much more flexibility in choice
and other tools that they can use in addition to it.
Exactly. And also, I also think that, I'm talking now about implication outside of psychotherapy. So we're looking a lot at the adaptive and maladaptive voices. This is relevant not only to the interaction
for
within psychotherapy.
Right.
So having like a dominant maladaptive voice and subtle adaptive one, and being better able to create a dialogue among states, both in interactions between people and conflicts between people, and internally, an internal conflict is something that is super important. So I think that our understanding about sequences, about helpful sequences that lead people to a better place, to feel better, to leverage their strength, and to be aware of where they are stuck or where they start to deteriorate, or where a conflict deteriorate. So I think that can be useful in also other contexts.
You are this unique mix, right? Because of your clinical training or whatever motivated you, right? There's a self-selection. You're a researcher with a heart, a big heart, obviously a big brain also, because some of the stuff you're doing is extraordinary. But you can even just hear the way you talk that everything that motivates you is trying to help people. And that's beautiful and that's wonderful. And I think that's probably a big piece of your success, that you come at it, not just, you're using the data, but at your heart. At the root of it is you want to help people. So it doesn't have any coldness associated with it. Sometimes we think AI, we think big data. Everything with you is warm. And it comes from such an empathetic and positive place. And I just know because of that, you're going to have incredible success. And you're really going to make a difference in this mental health challenge. We started from this depressing place, no pun intended. We end here in a place of hope because of some of the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This is exactly my hope, that we'll find ways to help people who actually really, really need help, and allow them to have better choice and freedom in their life.
So thank you
so much.
Thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining us today and sharing with us some of the positive potential for the future, and that are actually some things that are working already.
Thank you
really
so
wonderful.
much for inviting me. Thank you so much, Sharon.
You're welcome.